Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. They specialize in making their facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. Not only that, there are no move-in fees and there are no visitation restrictions. They are located near I-635 and Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more information, you can call 469-400-7650. That is Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Devin Hassan and Kendrick Johnson. On today's podcast, we're going to talk first-round reactions to the high school football playoffs, including things like a big night in Frisco ISD, a triple overtime thriller for Lewisville, and the best 4-win team in the state.
Dare we say.
But first, let's talk a little 9-6A versus 10-6A. I think, whether it's fair or not, just because of the size of the schools in District 9-6A and the pedigree of some of those athletic programs, fair or not, there's going to be this perception that in most of these first-round matchups, regardless of sport, 9-6A is kind of expected to kind of lord over 10-6A a bit. It's already happened in volleyball, when 9-6A swept 10-6A, and I believe they only, surrendered one set in doing so. And there was some talk heading into the first round this previous week in football that of a 4-0 sweep could very well be in the cards. Well, obviously we didn't get a 4-0 sweep. It was 2-2, and I think all things considered, 10-6A kind of held up pretty well.
I think so. I mean, even in the losses, Rowlett, taking on Allen is just a completely different animal. But Rowlett was able to at least be somewhat competitive in that first half. And Naaman Forest, who got blown out by Prosper 48-14, earlier this season, put up a better fight as well. And then you had the two teams that advances, Sachse able to gain their measure of revenge against Plano East in a game I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about here in a moment. And then Wiley going out there and surprising McKinney.
Yeah, it's just to recap of the scores from this one. Allen did the Allen thing. They beat Rowlett 56-21. Sachse defeats Plano East 35-25. Wiley over McKinney 38-28. And then Prosper 41-21 over Naaman Forest. But like I mentioned, that was a 13-7 game at the half, and Prosper's lone touchdown came on a pick six.
Yeah.
So a far different script than when those two teams saw each other all the way back in week one. And I believe Prosper won something to the tune of like 41-14, 48-14, something lopsided like that. Kendrick, you saw this McKinney team, and perhaps it's just because, like with Wiley, they were in this district, these last couple of years. So now that they're over in 10-6A, a little bit off the radar for us now. So, with the momentum that McKinney was able to build late in the season to clinch that playoff spot, it felt like at least a little bit of a surprise that Wiley was able to give them the fits that they did.
I guess since I was there, definitely if they play 10 times, they're 5-5. McKinney's inexperience came into play. They hadn't been on that big stage and playing on the road. A neutral site would have made a big difference in this game too. Wiley fell off the crowd. Their quarterback, Proctor Rashad Dixon, that guy was the player of the game. 150 yards on the ground, 3 tubs, and he threw for another one. So you got that one guy was the difference in the game. McKinney has something to hang their head out. Coach Shavers told me, tell everybody. So I'm using this platform to tell everybody the Lions will be back next year and they will be better. So if you're ones like this in the Shaver era, it's a lot of promise from McKinney. They got some people, even though they went to the playoffs, they got some people that they feel that they should have beat, that they let off the hook, like Plano East and stuff, that they got on their list that they're coming for next year. So nothing to hang their heads for. To me, they're ahead of schedule because on the schedule, I was trying to see how I see a path for them to the playoffs. I didn't see a realistic path, and they just made their own way. So the fact that they did that in year one, they have a very deep sophomore class and a pretty talented junior class coming back. They will be back, and they will be ready. They're not just trying to get there. They're kind of like to steal a coin from Conor McGregor. They didn't come to take part of the playoffs. They came to take over.
With you mentioned them, letting Plano East off the hook, and we can transition to Plano East, talk a little bit about that game, because that was definitely an anticipated first-round matchup with them rematching Sachse all the way back from week 3. It was at the time, kind of the signature win for Plano East in the way where it was 29-7, looked fairly dominant in doing so. Obviously, a lot has changed with the Sachse program ever since, and I think that Friday was maybe the first true realization that just how far things have come since that 0-2 0-3 start as they were able to avenge that early season loss to Plano East 35-25 in a game that really kind of bore a lot of similarities to that initial meeting. This was a very defensive-minded first half, 7-7, just like the first matchup. Sachse scored on its opening drive. Plano East defense, held serve the rest of the way. East ties it up late in the second quarter. I was surprised. Plano East really seemed to have momentum on its side, heading into the half. I mean, they were able to force a turnover on downs, and then as Sachse's driving to potentially, get a lead going into the break, Josh Blagowski, the standout linebacker for Plano East, he commandeers a goal line stand and just completely blows up a play at the goal line, sacks Derek Rose as time expires, and just like that, I mean, Plano East just roaring into the half, and Sachse, credit to them, they kind of just shook that off. Plano East was able to get a lead 13-7, and then it was all Sachse from there. And a lot of the kind of the elements that contributed to the way that Plano East was able to gain separation in that first meeting were evident on Friday, except they worked in Sachse's favor this time. You had the quick little burst where Sachse retakes the lead on the Trent Dean touchdown run, and then on the following drive, East gets right near midfield. Quarterback Brandon Mallory gets banged up on a sack as the third quarter ends. They got to bring in their backup, who wasn't even on the roster, provided to the press in the press box. That's just, that's how deep they had to dig.
Did Mallory get hurt?
No, he was back the following drive, but he was just dinged up for that. And it's, it stinks for Plano East in hindsight, because that was a play that really helped get momentum firmly back on Sachse's side as the backup comes in, throws a pick six to who else? Yeah, Braylon Brooks, as he returns his, I guess what is his fifth. Fourth, fifth. It felt like his 25th with the kind of year that he's had.
He's got four pick sixes and a 75-yard fumble return for a touchdown. So, and 10 interceptions on the year now.
Sign him up. What do you want to do?
A lot of receivers don't see the end zone 5 times in a season, let alone a defensive back.
And when we talked about this game going in, I mentioned, and the same thing going into the Rowlett game, I thought the Sachse defense, they had the playmakers. And I should have just said Braylon Brooks. Yeah. But they do have those guys that can turn the course of a game with one play. And that's what Braylon Brooks has been able to do. He did it against Lakeview when they had to struggle to beat Lakeview. But Braylon Brooks had a pick six. That was the difference in the game. Yeah. He doesn't he's got 10 interceptions, but it seems like they've all come at huge times in the game.
I was just impressed with how their defensive line held up, especially considering they were missing the anchor of that, maybe the defense overall in Hunter Spears, and yet it was a player like Anthony Nyanwu, who Coach Barron said afterwards, a kid they found in PE class, and he's out there making 2-3 sacks in a playoff game.
They found him in PE.
And that's legit. And it was kind of odd because I think back to that first matchup, and Plano East was the team that really kind of wore down Sachse as the game went along, and the roles were reversed on Friday. It was Sachse that was the more dominant team in the trenches, and credit to the Mustangs, because it really was a nice redemptive performance, and really it really did, like I said earlier, it really just showed how much progress they've made when you're able to beat a team the caliber of Plano East.
Devin can speak to this because you cover 10-6A. Wouldn't you be saying that those are the only two teams that could play in 9-6A on a year-to-year basis? Because Wiley, they were in the playoffs 2 years ago in the same district.
Rowlett would be fine in 9-6A.
And Sachse, of course.
And Lakeview and Naaman Forest had made the playoffs the last couple of years.
Shout out to LC.
Again, it's I think they're not going to beat Allen necessarily. But no one in 9-6 beats Allen anyway. Yeah. It's not like anybody there is taking care of business against Allen. I've told Matt
before, they're the bully on the block, but nobody swings on the bully.
but those teams would all be competitive. You could make an argument the last couple of years that Sachse would finish second in that district. Mm-hmm.
So Sachse and Wiley could put.
Yeah, and Rowlett, has had some really good teams in the past. They've taken on some of those teams in the playoffs and been able to win some of those games. So yeah, I think so. But just real quickly back, to the last thing on the Sachse Plano East. Yeah, in the trenches. But having Derek Rose at quarterback allowed Sachse to stick to their game plan. Yeah. Even if they only had 7 points in the first half, they still knew what they did best and they stuck with it. As opposed to I think the first meeting where they tried to, they're not. They score on the first play from scrimmage and they're shut out. They're going to have to try some different things. I think that allowed them to, with having Derrick Rose, hey, we're going to stick with it, our points will come. And you mentioned in the trenches, yeah, losing Hunter Spears makes a huge difference, but that's one thing where you see, they rotate 8-9 guys on that defensive line starting week one, and you see that depth kind of pay off when other guys are able to step up. You mentioned, Clark Yarborough, Josh Stafford, Ryan Jones. Those guys have been kind of stalwarts of that line, and they've been able to elevate their level of play.
Now, obviously, it is still worth noting because if there was any one moment from this game that probably went a bit more viral than others, yes. it was the fight. That's right. There was a fight late in this game as Sachse is put basically a coffin nail touchdown run by Derrick Rose to make it, I believe, 35-19 after Chase Frank's extra point goes up. There are fisticuffs, and it was not just some routine pushing and shoving. This was a legit. Now, this was a brawl. This was one that drew coaches out, and you had coaches getting trampled on trying to break things up. You had a helmet. Someone's helmet got ripped off and flown like 50 feet in the air. Cool. It was maybe a Sachse helmet, I think. I don't know. There were a lot of. It was definitely a very, very heated. It was a very heated scuffle between the Panthers and the Mustangs, and one that wound up resulting in 8 ejections, 5 for Plano East and 3 for Sachse. And
they're not eligible this week.
That's the thing. Well, with Sachse, over the summer, the UIL legislative committee, they stipulated that if a player is ejected from a football game, that at minimum they must miss the first half of the following game. So, and there were some, of those 3 names, there were a couple impactful ones for Sachse. So, when you factor in what they have up next against Waco Midway, which is among the favorites to potentially make it to the regional final in 6A Region 2, obviously you need all the horses you can have, and if Sachse is a bit short-handed early on at least, that could put the Mustangs in a pretty tough spot.
It really does, and it's just something that it's inexcusable.
Oh yeah.
You've got to know what's at stake anytime. I don't care if it's week 2 or week 12. They're going to have to deal with a couple notable losses and just get their head refocused, because that's something that can kind of drag on, kind of stick with you. It's a discipline issue, and they need to put it in the rearview mirror and get focused.
Because it had been simmering all game long. You could see a lot of physicality, a lot of chippiness between the players, and it was. But that's football, though. That kind of stuff happens all the time. But you keep it there. You contain it within that. You don't let it escalate to something that could have a potentially damaging effect on the team big picture. So on both sides, just a total lapse of maturity, and just kind of. And both coaches sound pretty embarrassed about the whole thing, as they should, because there's no reason for any of that.
And so I heard people talking about it over the weekend that it might have even had off the field. I guess the origin of the conflict, because people don't think about Sachse and Plano East being rivals, but those schools are not that far apart at all.
It's like 15, 20 minutes.
And they run in similar circles, so a lot of these guys know each other off the field. And so
they're in the mix, man. Who are your sources? You got street insiders.
Street insiders, yes, right. That's all working the beat, Kendrick.
Let's see. Well, we can shift gears to one of the other teams in Region 2, one that had a very strong opening to the playoffs. A team that I think maybe if you just looked at win-loss records, this might have been deemed an upset, but we knew something might be brewing with Mesquite Horn with the job that they did closing out the regular season and just the general pedigree of that program, and they showed as much in defeating Temple.
Yeah, 45-38. One of the better games, better by district games in the state. Nikausi Emery catches a 37-yard touchdown pass from Jermaine Givens with 11 seconds left, and that's the difference in a game that went back and forth, all night long. Again, this was an 0-7 Horn team, but we kept, we talked about it in the podcast for several weeks now that, despite their struggles early on against top competition, this is a team that's to be reckoned with in the playoffs. They're showing that experience. Jermaine Givens has just this last month, he's been incredible. He was the district most valuable player last year, but he kind of struggled this, for most of the year. They didn't have quite the set of receivers that they've had in years past, so the passing game has struggled. Now, Jermaine Givens has been taken off with his legs, and that was no different on Friday. 17 carries, 211 yards. He led 11-6 in rushing. He's been able to do that, but this is a guy that threw for over 2,800 yards last season, and he came into this game averaging less than 100 yards per game passing. And it was just, trying to get on the same page with some of the receivers. Well, some of those receivers stepped up this past week, and that I think is the most encouraging thing for Horn going forward. Is Jermaine Givens goes 20 of 26 for 293 yards and 3 touchdowns. Those are the kind of games he was putting up last year. Putting up over 500 yards of offense in a game, rushing and passing. The rushing's been there, the passing hasn't. So it's hugely encouraging for Horn going forward. Having a couple of these receivers step up and having Givens rounding back into form at just the right time, and I think you probably consider them a favorite going forward now against Wiley this Friday.
Yeah, this Horn team all of a sudden has a chance to go 3 rounds deep in the playoffs.
I guess I joked in the newsroom about a certain program having a mystique, but that experience has to come in some way. People don't realize, like, these kids grow up expecting that even if they have a bad year like Mesquite Horn has, they know the tournament's a whole different ballgame because they've seen people go on that run, and I think that's an underrated value fact that's coming into play.
Before we get out of here for this half of the podcast, Devin, I just want to get a quick thoughts from you from your game on Friday. Mesquite Poteet and just a thriller against College Station, one the Pirates came up on the short end of, but nevertheless a pretty
they at home?
A pretty fun first round game.
It was a wild game. College Station, the defending Division II, 5A Division II state champions, are able to pull out a 41-38 victory. Just too many big plays allowed by Poteet. College Station had 4 touchdowns for 67 yards or longer. Brandon Joseph, their electric return man, he had a 100-yard kickoff return and a 60-yard punt return. And you get 2 touchdowns on special teams, it's really tough to overcome. And I said this during the thing, I said they fell behind John Tyler 21-0. They fell behind McKinney North 21-10. You cannot dig too big of a hole this time of year, and they go out there and do the same thing. They spot College Station a 2-touchdown lead.
Coach Hess.
But to their credit, they were able to rally and take the lead against John Tyler before the Hail Mary did them in. They were able to come back and beat McKinney North, and they almost came back again. They had all the momentum on their side. It was 34-31. They had the home crowd. They were energized, and to College Station's credit, they had a 4th and about 1.5 yards down there at the Poteet 26. They'd run their quarterback Brandon Williams 4 straight times right into the pack. I think Poteet was expecting the same play, and it looked like that's where they're going. But he had Colby Cashin outflanking him. They ran a perfect option. It was a perfect call. Poteet was at, they collapsed on the quarterback, and it was just a brilliant call. So they go up 41-31. Again, Poteet's able to come back. They get a 40-yard touchdown pass from Dalton Dale to Cam Lankin with 48 seconds left, and you think, okay, maybe we're going to have memorial magic once again. But the onside kick does not work out for him, and it's a really disappointing loss for a Poteet team that I think was confident going in, and I think they were confident they could make a run this year, and I think they're going to look back at that game as one that they should have won.
First time they've ever lost in the first round?
First time, since their little streak here in 2010 of making the playoffs 8 out of 9 years. Okay. Yes, every previous appearance there, they made it at least to the area rounds. So, disappointing on a lot of fronts for Poteet this year.
We've got some more reactions from the first round of the high school football playoffs, including a look at Frisco ISD, some thoughts on Denton County, and we will get to that in a bit. First off, though, I want to shine that student-athlete spotlight out on Lewisville. Lewisville was involved in a heck of a game against Keller this past week, and obviously Lewisville's defense has been kind of at the forefront of the Farmers' resurgence this season. And Justin Thomas took a chance to swing by and talk with their standout safety Kevin Anderson, and we'll see what he had to say after a word from the sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD Painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, or exterior, ATD Painting has you covered. They have 4 locations in the Metroplex, including Plano and Lewisville. You can call 972-694-8888 for more information, or you can visit their website at atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, we're here with Kevin Anderson, Senior Safety for the Lewisville Fighting Farmers. So, Kevin, thanks for taking a few minutes to join us here on the Star Local Media Sports Podcast.
Yes, sir.
Well, you guys are gearing up for a big second-round playoff game against Duncanville. Just talk about the mindset of the team and how you guys are getting ready for one of the top-ranked teams in the state on Saturday.
We just got to go into it knowing that we'll take care of our job. It's nothing really that we have to do to prove to everybody else. We're the only people that believe in ourselves. Everybody else is expecting us to lose, but we got a mindset that we're going to go hit him in the mouth.
You guys are just, I'm guessing, just starting to look at film and stuff on Duncanville, but what are your kind of early impressions on the Panthers?
They're a pretty good football team. They're physical. They're going to try to run it down our throat, but we just got to be big up front and be good in the back end.
So you're a senior. Obviously, it's been a long time since Lewisville's football team had been in the playoffs until this season, but you guys got the Farmers back over the hump. Just talk about the season and what it means to you as a senior to have Lewisville back in the playoffs this season.
It means a lot. Since freshman year, we've been talking about it. Our class, 2019, was going to bring back the old Lewisville, and we got the alumni and the whole city behind us, so it feels pretty good.
What do you think about this team makes this team special? Why were you guys able to have the season you have and get back to the playoffs and now already in the second round?
I think this team, we're big on brotherhood. Like we all have each other's back. The previous years, we were all individuals. Everybody wanted to do their own thing, but this team, we all play for the man next to us, to the right and to the left of us.
So you guys get to the playoffs for the first time since 2007, and quite the thrilling first-round game you guys had on Friday. Just talk about the emotions and the intensity of playing in a playoff game that goes into multiple overtimes.
I mean, it was really emotional. We got lucky in the first half. The quarterback went out the game, so that kind of gave us an extra lead. But I mean, it's just the vibe and the fans and everybody in the stands. The game was lit.
Your guys' defense has been on a roll. I know they got up in the 20s, but obviously overtime's had a little bit to do with that. But before that in district, you guys really kind of shut down everybody. Just talk about what your defense has been able to do and some of your teammates.
I mean, we're big on stopping the run. Coach Wiley, he stresses every week that nobody's going to be able to line up and power through us. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do it without our front four, but the back end, we're pretty solid too. Yeah,
and you guys have, I'm guessing, pretty good camaraderie. Some of you guys in the secondary have been on the varsity for a few years now.
Yes, sir. All years we played together.
So you guys started district and had a pretty heartbreaking loss against Flower Mound. You guys had a good lead and lost it. How are you guys able to put that game behind you and get on this winning streak that you guys have been on a roll since then?
Well, I mean, the Flower Mound game, we knew what happened. We just had to get over it. We knew that we shot ourselves in the foot. We gave it away. I mean, there's nothing we really could do about it but bounce back and come back stronger.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about, obviously, for those that don't know, Kevin is committed to Texas State. Talk about kind of what your decision was there and your thought process and what you're looking forward to at the next level.
I mean, I kind of chose Texas State over everyone else because they kind of made me feel like I was at home. Like, they brought me in. Like, they actually wanted to have me there. And Coach Withers was good to me. He was like, he wasn't just a coach. He was just he was a good friend.
Yeah. All right, so what's it going to take for you guys to pull off the upset and take down mighty Duncanville here on Saturday out at Birdville?
We got to execute. We got to just, we can't have any mental mistakes. We got to come in focused. We got to punch them in the mouth early.
Coming out for practice today, did you feel like your teammates had that intensity? Everybody's kind of ready to go?
Yes, sir. I think this was one of the best Mondays we had going in. We're very confident about the game on Saturday.
All right, Kevin, well, anything else you wanted to mention?
Nothing much. Just look out for the upset on Saturday.
Well, you heard it from Kevin there, so you can check out Kevin and the Farmers Saturday against Duncanville out at Birdville Fine Arts Athletic Complex. Kevin, thanks a lot for taking a few minutes to join us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Kevin Anderson for taking the time to chat with Justin for our Student Athlete Spotlight, recapping a wild one for Lewisville. What a way for the Farmers to reintroduce themselves to the playoffs.
Yeah, I wasn't out there for that one, but looks like an awesome game that went down there out at Collins Stadium in Denton with the Farmers winning in triple overtime to get to the area round. So big win for Lewisville there. Looks like our former colleague, I guess, Tim got to watch a good one out there. So. But yeah, A.J. Newsom the quarterback, counted for 4 touchdowns, and then again that Lewisville defense steps up again. You know, they hold Keller to 20 points in the regulation and then shut him out in 2 of the 3 overtime periods. So obviously a huge win for Lewisville. Looks like they were going crazy after the win, obviously rightfully so. So fun times out in Farmerland, and just got to check out a little practice today as they're getting ready for Duncanville and stuff. So
we were talking in the first half about just the 9-6A versus 10-6A and it being a bit more competitive than folks might have initially expected coming in. With with as balanced as those 5-6A and 6-6A districts are, what were your just kind of overall impressions on how one fared versus the other after the first round?
Well, obviously I was a little surprised, not necessarily surprised that the the series kind of split 2-2. I mean, they seem like pretty close districts, but I was kind of surprised that the 2 5-6A wins were as convincing as they were.
Yeah.
It looks like Flower Mound was a little closer than the score. I think it was, they scored maybe late in the third to make it 31-21 against Geyer, and then got outscored 21-0 in the fourth quarter. So maybe a little closer than 52-21, but then, man, Carroll just laid the wood to Coppell on Saturday. I mean, that was as big of a beating as I've seen all year. Like, I don't really have much to say about that. I mean, the former Cowboy T.J. McDaniel goes crazy. He has 300 yards rushing, 5 total touchdowns. So he got after his
SMU commit.
Yeah,
too?
SMU commit. Yeah, so he spent his first 2 years at Coppell, and he was on varsity as a freshman and sophomore before going to South Lake. So
He might have been a little bit more jazzed up for that game than
he
normal.
was a little jazzed up for that one, and then he went 70 or 69 yards on the third play on a little option, and just kept rolling from there. Coppell really just couldn't do anything.
Did get a bit of redemption though from Hebron.
Yeah.
You know, and we talked about Plano East and Sachse reversing the result from their prior meeting. That same week actually was the Hebron Fossil Ridge game, and Hebron able to exact some revenge in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, how about the Hebron defense? They play a first time and give up 7 points, and they turn around and hold them to 7. You know, we talked a lot about Trajan Bridges not playing in that first game, but he doesn't have like a dynamic impact on the defense. So
No, that was definitely
the Hebron defense really bucked up there and shut down a Fossil Ridge offense that's pretty decent, and obviously had a good game against them the first time. And then it looks like Bridges definitely helped the offense, and I'm sure you saw his one-handed catch.
Actually, I haven't yet. You have a sweet one?
Yeah, he has a nice. You can watch ESPN because Randy Moss was calling him out. He got mossed.
Really?
So yeah, he was. They had the highlight on whatever NFL Game Day or whatever before, and Randy Moss gave him a shout out. So yeah, it was a nice one-handed catch.
Good for Trajan.
Beckham style, like in the.
He's made it
on the sideline there.
He's on. You got Moss. He's made it.
Yeah. So. And so they'll get Richardson Pierce, who pulled off that crazy upset over Cedar Hill.
Without question, the most surprising result in the first round, Richardson Pierce over Cedar Hill.
People are saying that was like the most surprising thing since Rowlett beat Allen way back in the day, like 10 years ago.
I'd buy it. Yeah. I mean,
weren't they were projected 95% win probability against something. They were like 40-point favorites in some spots. I don't know. People were predicting that, and then they go beat Cedar Hill. That was nuts. Yeah. I don't see that magic continuing over.
Let's shift gears to Frisco ISD, Brian, because it was a big night for Frisco ISD. Some very resounding victories out of that district for the first round. Who would you say between those teams that did find the win column? Who would you say was kind of your MVP of the first round?
Without a doubt, Frisco Lone Star. You know, in a rematch from last year's regional final, a game they lost in the fourth round to the Broncos. You know, they come back and pummel them in the first round, 41-6. You know, it was close, you know, the first quarter and a half, and then Lone Star made some big plays at the end of the first half, and then they really made some big plays to begin the second half. They found Marvin Mims, their go-to receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the area. He scored on a 40-yard jet sweep. The play before that, he had a 30-yard catch on 3rd and long to keep the drive alive. So once they got that, you know, those 2 big plays, they were up 20-0, and it was just, the route was just on. And I was kind of shocked. I thought this was going to be, you know, another, you know, prototypical Lone Star game, you know, 16-13, 13-10, whatever. They've had a lot of games like that, and it was kind of pacing out to be that way. It was 3-0 at the end of the first quarter, Lone Star, and I was like, oh man, another defensive battle for the Rangers, and then they just flipped the switch, turned it on, and you know, no one will admit it to me that they were looking for revenge. Coach Rayburn, none of them will admit it, but I know deep down they really, really wanted that one, because that one knocked them out of the playoffs last year in a close one, a game that they felt like, you know, I felt like they outplayed them last year. And, you know, Jalen Catalon wasn't playing in this game. You know, the star safety, star quarterback. You know, he was one of the best players in the state of Texas before he got hurt in week 1. But still, nonetheless, to beat a team like that, 41-6, without a doubt, that was the best performance in Frisco ISD. How far behind was what Frisco did to Sulphur Springs? They laid it to them. Yeah. I thought that was going to be close. With my pick going into that game for the picket line, I was unsure. You know, I think everyone picked Frisco. Did we not? And
there might have been one for Sulphur Springs.
Okay, yeah, I think it was Kendrick. And call him out. You know, I thought that was going to be one of those where, you know, it's going to be 3-3 or even 4-2. And I almost picked Sulphur Springs just because, you know, I don't know. Frisco's back in the playoffs. I don't know if they can do it, but man, they look good. And they face a really tough South Oak Cliff team. They're 10-0, undefeated, but they haven't really played anyone. And they've played some of those DISD schools that aren't very good this year, to put it lightly. And they had a game scheduled against Duncanville in week 2, but that was canceled back when the crazy lightning and rain delays and stuff. So you can't really gauge how good South Oak Cliff really is. So I won't be surprised if Frisco keeps on rolling again this week against the Bears.
It really just does speak to just the. I always tend to almost pick Frisco by default in the first round of the playoffs, because I feel like it really is kind of a built-in advantage, just that wing T style, and just a team that has never seen that before, and just how rare that style of play is, and how like Frisco, like all the Frisco schools have seen. They've played Frisco a million times, so they know what to expect. They know how to scheme for that stuff. But a team like Sulphur Springs, where you just you can't appropriately simulate just how to prepare for that style of offense just in the amount of time that they're afforded.
Yeah. And they'll huddle, and then they'll break the huddle and just line up.
Oh yeah, they run fast. Yeah, I noticed that against Lake Dallas. They were quick to the line and quick to snap the ball.
And it can cause problems if a team isn't really big and powerful up front to really stop that run, or quick on the edges with the outside linebackers. And at Sulphur Springs just didn't have an answer, because you really I think 4 different runners carried the ball, not even to mention the quarterback. Frisco, you can't just key in on one guy or even 2 guys. There's 3, 4, sometimes 5 guys that'll run the ball for Frisco. I think 4 different runners in that game had rushing touchdowns. How do you stop that? If you don't have a dominant defensive line. So
Frisco, the 4th time in 6 years that they've advanced out of the first round. And I think just in kind of recipes like that, where when you factor in the ability to establish the run, plus they won the turnover battle. So, I mean, there definitely is a formula there. And if Frisco is able to do what it does and win the turnover battle, that's a really tough team to beat when they're able to get that kind of stuff in their favor.
That defense set the tone early in that game. They stopped them on 4th and 1. They stopped them on 4th and 1 again later in Frisco territory. I think it was 4 turnover on downs they forced in that game. They got a really big interception in the 3rd quarter of that game that kind of sealed the deal, kind of put it away, maybe put it out of reach, because Frisco went on to score on that drive. So the defense was great. They had a scoop and score in the final minutes just to add, little salt in the wounds. And, but it was a great game defensively. We talk about the wing T offense for Frisco, but their defense is looking really good right now also. So
Lone Star versus Legacy was theoretically the number 2 seed from 5A versus the number 3 seed, I should say, from 6-5A, and that produced a 41-6 result. So how bizarre was then the Colony and Mansfield Timberview?
They just couldn't stop the run. They just got whooped in the trenches. Harrington had no time to throw on offense. I think at one point they had 10 straight incompletions. I want to say maybe the only pass they even completed in the second half was actually a touchdown pass that Miles Price threw on a double reverse pass to Christian Gonzalez. I don't recall if Harrington even had a completion. But then I guess Timberview had some quarterback issues, and so they made a change because of injuries. And so they run a lot of Wildcat with this Stacy Snee kid. And they just couldn't stop him. I mean,
it's like the Miami Dolphins versus the Patriots back in 2008.
Almost 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, he went Ronnie Brown. But they just couldn't stop him. And so they just pounded the ball, and the Colony kept it close. Momentum is such a crazy thing. So the Colony comes out and they just get a quick 14-0 lead. Price is all alone for a touchdown. Then they come back down and score, and they're kicking off, and they kick off a touchback. But right before they had kicked, there was a clock malfunction. So the officials had blown the whistle right before they kick it. So they have to go kick again. Timberview runs the kickback all the way for a touchdown, and it just it just rattled them. I guess they never recovered. They end up falling behind. They get within 5 late. Actually, we're only down 5 with 10 minutes left, but they couldn't muscle up another scoring drive. But I was very surprised. That does not look like a 4 seed from Timberview. But then you look at some of their scores, and they weren't even really competitive against Lancaster or Highland Park. So just one of those days where I guess the Colony was off a little bit, didn't get any breaks, and Timberview just controlled the line of scrimmage.
Coaches say that the first round is where if there's going to be an upset, you're probably going to see it in the first round. Any other first round reactions before we get out of here?
Well, I thought we were going to see an upset between Highland Park and then Frisco Independence. Midway through the 2nd quarter of that game, I was looking at that one pretty closely. It was tied 14-14 at one point before Highland Park pulled away. It's not like Independence really got outplayed in that one. They turned the ball over 3 times. Highland Park turned it over 0 times. and you really can't do that against the best team in the state, the two-time defending state champions, and that's why they lost, down the stretch. But really, Independence really hung in there with Highland Park. I was pleasantly surprised. Pleased to see that also, and they did it in the second half without Logan Brungart, their star running back. He might get a superlative this year in that district. This year he was so good.
And that will do it for this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. To look at some of our takes from the first round, and we'll be back on Wednesday to talk about the second round of the playoffs, including our game of the week and some of the other marquee matchups that are on the docket. Brian, Justin, Kendrick, and Devin, appreciate everybody for tagging along for this one. Folks, you enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. They deliver more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. Their McKinney office is currently hiring Class A CDL drivers, order selectors, and many other entry and part-time positions. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers, or you can call 214-491-3130. That is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.